slightly behind schedule. If you guys can hear me, please let me know. Hey. Yeah, first time I'm rushing to get a stream open. Had a lot of issues with my vocal stuff. So we'll do the regular thing. We'll do like 10-ish minutes of questions into the breakdowns. Hey, Mr. Mike. What would you say is John Silva's biggest weakness? I think that it's probably his lack of urgency. He does, of course, make up for it because he gets insanely good reads very soon afterwards and then can end the fight. But if he were to be thrown into a 3-round title eliminator, I don't think a 5-round fight would be a problem. Let's say something was weird and he wasn't going to get a title shot after the Lopez fight and he had to fight a 3-round like co-main event or something. There's a small chance that he falls behind in round 1 and then in round 2 like starts winning towards the end of the round but loses a close round and loses round 3 because he doesn't have crazy urgency. Do you think Aaron Pico is any good? We'll get to that. I'm not as high on him as a lot of people are, to say the least, but he's not a bad fighter by any means. What's your most underrated lock? The fight no one's really talking about. I don't think there are many fights no one is talking about, but let's see. Like, if I have to choose a fight no one is talking about, I mean, I think, like, Lupi Godinez should probably win, but she's also super inconsistent, so I don't know if I'd want to say it's a lock. I won $200 using your stream last time. Glad to hear it. Do you think Alexandre Topuria goes far? He seems very intelligent. I think that sometimes that can hold you back a little as a fighter, to be honest. Like, when you're that intelligent. We saw it with Corey Sandhagen a bit, where he kind of just overthinks stuff. But I think he could go fairly far. I just don't know if he's going to go like all the way to a championship by any means. Who do you think is the most skilled fighter UFC only? Yeah, I mean, probably John Silva, going back to him, honestly. Jared versus MVP is getting blown out of proportion. Seems like everyone is saying MVP by domination. Honestly, whoever wins the fight, I don't expect it to be close, but we'll get to that. Hooper by flying toe hold. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see a leg lock. Flying would be fun. What's your initial thoughts on Aspinall versus Gane? So, the biggest problem with Gane as a fighter is that he's a heavyweight who's a striker who just doesn't have power. And like, yeah, obviously he can finish someone, but when he finishes someone, it tends to be with volume. So if Gane had one-punch knockout power, I'd be more inclined to take him against Aspinall because Aspinall is hittable. But the fact that even if Aspinall makes a stupid mistake and Gane counters perfectly, Aspinall will probably be okay. Well, that means that Aspinall will probably find a shot forced or just get a takedown, get a submission. What do you think of Mix versus, I don't even know how to say his name, but I know who you're talking about, yeah. In a must-win situation with how bad he looked in his debut. I'll have to look more into the guy. I've seen a little bit of tape on him, but nothing crazy. Does Susurkaev have top 5 potential? Potentially, yes. At the moment, he's definitely not there skill-wise, though, mainly because his defense, but we'll get to that. Who beats John Silva all-time or current? In a way, a younger Volkanovski over 3 rounds would be a good style to beat John, just because he could probably point fight to a decision, especially when his reflexes were fully there and only over 3 rounds. Otherwise, I'm really not sure. Do you think Gage Young has potential? Yes, I do. Biggest letdown, Kopylov. I mean, we talked about it on the stream. I was pretty confident Costa was going to beat him. Am I wrong for saying Khamzat is overrated as a sub-threat? You are not wrong. I think it's somewhere in the middle, right? He's definitely not the submission threat that everyone seems to think he is. Like, even the fact that he didn't reposition and finish that choke against Usman was kind of like, yeah, maybe you're not as good a grappler as everyone thought. And then also with Whittaker, he was having trouble setting it up, and if Whittaker hadn't had that issue, I don't think he would have been able to finish it by any means. But he's very good at controlling to the point that he can force a submission anyway, so it's somewhere in between, I think. Do not like Susurkaev boxing defense, but he's striking at range and his takedown defense is very good. Yeah, exactly. What about Conor versus Silva? It's a tough one. I mean, Conor could catch him in round 1 for sure, but if it leaves round 1, Silva would take over. I think Peaks Max also beats him, to be honest. I don't think so, because Max, while not as hittable as people seem to think, was not going to be able to like play perfectly safe for that long. I think by round 2, Silva would start landing and probably beat him by decision in a 3-round fight, probably by TKO in a 5-round fight. Thoughts on Yuri's future in the UFC against Khalil, and that's assuming he beats Khalil versus Ankalaev and even like Reyes. It's tough to say because Yuri sometimes changes his style so radically in between fights. Even though he looked like quote-unquote good against Hill, I did feel like his offense was very muted, and I didn't love that. Like, for example, he had a few times where he kind of set up the spinning back fist and then just kind of pulled it back. Stuff like that, where he wasn't going for his, like, chaotic offensive style as eagerly as he usually does. And if he can't, like, rein in exactly where he needs to be, it's going to be problematic. That being said, I do think he beats Khalil, because Khalil does not do well in chaos. And worst case Yuri can probably just take him down. Khalil has terrible takedown defense, and on the ground Yuri can finish him. Do you think Khamzat versus DDP could go to decision? It is possible. We'll get into that for that fight, though. How do you think TJ or Cruz versus Merab would go? I think that Cruz would do better than TJ, because his footwork would make it a lot harder for Merab to spam shoot on. TJ had good footwork, but it wasn't as elusive as Cruz, even though it was kind of based on Cruz's. So I think Merab would probably 49-46 TJ, and probably 48-47 Cruz. I thought you were in an AI voice. Really? Why does everyone think that? You're not the first person to say that. I really like DDP's body kicks against Khamzat. Yes, I think anything that takes away from Chimaev's gas tank is a good idea. All excited for this breakdown? Get to hear it. There's an AI voice with a very similar tone of voice to you. Interesting. Very constant voice sounds like AI. I mean, I guess that's a thing now in like the age of AI voices. I try to keep my voice very consistent for the breakdowns. Obviously on stream you guys will be to see a bit more variety, especially as I get more comfortable with it. What does Kaio need to do to adjust to Imavov? Combo punching since Imavov moves back in a straight line against Buckley. The Buckley thing is too long ago, in my opinion, to really be relevant now. I think Imavov has fixed a lot of his striking defense issues. I think it's more about picking your places and not just constantly trading with someone who's significantly faster than you. So, for example, if he can chip at the calf kick, that would be a really good idea. If he can just not get into these engages where Imavov's speed is going to be the problem, maybe start wrestling really early. If I was game planning for Kaio, I'd probably say round 1 and 2, you're throwing calf kicks or you're shooting, one or the other. Then after that, you can probably slow down and like actually fight in a boxing if you really want to. Not even joking, a guy like Myles Garrett could be a ranked fighter at heavyweight if he trains MMA for 10 months. I mean, any mildly athletic person could be a ranked heavyweight if they train for 10 months. Your voice does sound kinda AI-ish, but it's also distinctly human. Fair enough. Yeah. Live stream with voice chat when? I'll probably start trying to implement that within 1 to 2 months. There's so much stuff that I want to change in the next 2 months. Hopefully I'm going to phase it in slowly. Who do you have winning between Imavov and Caio? I think Imavov is faster, but they're similar in terms of well-roundedness. So it's a tough one, because I've been very high on Imavov for a very long time, much longer than anyone who's thought he would be a contender, to say the least. But it's really hard to bet against Caio's game planning, because even though he's not the most impressive in his fights, in all honesty, like, he goes to a lot of decisions. Even the finishes are against like Paul Craig, or like a submission against Mikhail, who had basically no takedown defense at that time. Stuff like that, where it's just generally not the most impressive. So I am giving a mild edge to Imavov. I do think that skill for skill, he is a little bit better, and he's just more naturally dangerous. But I would not be shocked either way. How do you think RDR versus Hernandez would go? RDR definitely has a shot. I do think, based on the very weird fight we saw between him and Whitaker, he would probably slow down too much if he can't finish it early, and I don't think he would be able to finish it early, because Hernandez is not easy to finish by any means. There is a chance that the knees to the body could take out Hernandez, because Hernandez does have a very weak body, it seems. He's gotten hurt by body shots very frequently. But yeah, that being said, I think that he could probably survive and drown RDR. I think Caio beats Imavov, Imavov beats DDP, and DDP beats Caio. I mean, it's possible. Caio is the worst fighting nerd, in my opinion. That's also possible. I think it's between him and Prates. Prates has other, like, fundamental issues. I would say Caio fundamentally is probably better than Prates, but Prates also has such crazy one-punch knockout power that he may be, like better in terms of outcomes. RDR might KO him with clinches. Yeah, very possible. RDR versus DDP for an Ultimate Toon fight. Fair. Fluffy having a chinny body is low-key funny, yeah. Agreed. Alright, we'll get into the breakdowns. What we're probably going to do is go, like, a few fights at a time this time, and then maybe take an intermission for a few more questions and such. So, they don't even have the picture for Idris on here, which is strange, because they have it on the UFC website. But for those of you who have not watched The Ultimate Fighter, because I do not blame anyone, to say the least, who hasn't, it is not, in my opinion, very entertaining at this point. Idris is a Kaza fighter who is pretty well-rounded. He has very extreme footwork. Like, he has, like, almost Dominic Cruz-like footwork, except more dramatic. The biggest issue with his footwork is that he doesn't really implement it in terms of creating offense well, in my opinion. So he uses a lot of footwork, but then he won't throw anything. Not that he has terrible striking by any means, but that's an issue he can fall into sometimes, where he's just, like, switching stances a lot and jumping around, and you just don't see anything coming out of him. It's like, okay, can be useful, but he's not using it to its fullest extent by any means. In terms of his actual offense, he hits relatively hard. He's a little loose in how he throws, so, like, the technique isn't fully there yet with his hands, in my opinion. His boxing is, like, okay, overhands, hooks, and such, still with, like, relatively good technique and speed, but nothing really that is special, in my opinion. His kicks are a bit better. He'll kick out of both stances. Given his constant stance switches, it can be a bit hard to pick up on. He also does have spinning techniques and such. He throws a lot of spinning back fists in a row, especially when he backs you up to the fence. Makes him a bit predictable, but maybe he can catch someone that way. He hasn't so far from what I've seen, but obviously I haven't seen that many fights out of him. On the other side, Morales is pretty much a pure grappler. He was in the UFC in the past. He went 1-2 in the UFC, I believe. One of his losses was to Figgy, though, so that's not the biggest deal in the world. He has decently strong, powerful hands, I should say, but he has no real technique in setting them up. So if someone is really striking with him and is a half-decent striker, he's just going to spam takedowns. On the ground, he's really just looking for the choke. He's not really good at setting up ground and pound, which is definitely a massive detriment for him, because if he was using ground and pound in his last fight on The Ultimate Fighter, it would have made things a lot easier for him. So, Morales' last fight in The Ultimate Fighter, there's no, like, other way of saying this. He lost, like badly. He got a very weird robbery decision. It was the clearest 29-28 I've seen in a long time. Somehow he won a split decision. I don't know. It genuinely seemed like pre-written scorecards, I'm not going to lie. Like, there was no argument for him winning rounds 2 and 3. Idris also kind of got a lucky / cheating style win in his first fight, where he got kneed in the stomach rather. Acted like it was a groin shot, ref called a break, and then he was able to come back from there. Granted, his opponent wasn't bad by any means. I don't think losing to him would have been the biggest deal, and he did perform relatively well after he got the break after the fake groin shot. But it is definitely an argument that, like, okay, if that fake groin shot doesn't happen, he was going to lose round 1, and then because he got a point deducted in round 2 because of the eye poke, he may have just lost the fight straight up. On the ground, which is Idris' like main game plan, even though his shots aren't spectacular, he's going to focus on ground and pound a lot more than Morales will. So Morales will chase a sub. Idris is probably just going to hit you. Maybe look for the sub if it's open, but not really chase it by any means. He kind of likes to stay on the back and ground and pound from there, or even like halfway between, like, say, side control in the back. But overall, I would say Idris' grappling is stronger than his wrestling, whereas Morales' submissions and wrestling are better, but he has nothing else on the ground. Answer a few questions. Prates is powerful, but has no chance of becoming champ. Every other fighting nerd definitely has a chance. That's his fair take, yeah. A breakdown, yes. By the way, is this your full-time job or do something else? Right now, this is my full-time job, yeah. Rough breakdown for what is new with Strat 3. I mean, Strat 3 is going to be a while. The other tool I'm working on is something else. For anyone who's not in the loop of what I'm talking about, he's talking about the betting algorithms we're using. We're currently on Strat 2. Strat 3 is going to be the next one, which I want to be a massive step up from Strat 2 in terms of the betting capability, but it's going to be some time before we get there. Have a good night, Morris. Alright, we'll go on to the next fight. Anyone have any questions about Idris versus Morales? I don't think anyone really cares, but if anyone has any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll move on to Cannonier Silva. Do you think John Silva beats Ilya? I think I'd give him a very mild edge, but it's pretty much 50-50 in my opinion. DDP or Hamzat we'll get to later. So for Cannonier Silva versus Yanni Barboza, another one we'll just gloss over quickly. Cannonier Silva is very dangerous for a WMMA fighter. She's willing to chase a lot of random submissions and stuff. She has power on the feet as well. She can get knockdowns. Barbosa is more of a point fighter. She can get takedowns and like get subs from there, as we saw in her last fight against Yana Belbita, but her primary game plan is just going to be mainly keep it on the feet. The biggest problem for Barbosa is her takedown defense sucks. Cannonier Silva is probably going to look to take her down. This is short notice for Barbosa, so she's probably going to get taken down for at least 2 of the 3 rounds, so I have to lean towards Cannonier Silva. WMMA, though, and Cannonier Silva did gas out very badly in her last fight, so there's no reliable pick here or anything. Who wins the first fight? Oh yeah, I don't think I picked a winner. I'm going to say Idris wins by second round TKO. Morales just doesn't have enough in his skill set. For Silva versus Barbosa, I'm going to say Cannonier Silva wins a 29-28 decision. Hamzat will make DDP look easy. Technically, DDP is horrible and Hamzat subs him. We'll see. I'll get to that breakdown. Well, we're far from that one, but we'll get to it eventually. Okay, so with Battle versus Ruziboev, this is an interesting one, because I've been seeing pretty much everyone take Ruziboev here. And now, I'm kind of a Brian Battle hater, because I feel like he very clearly lost his last fight against Randy Brown and just got gifted a decision, because he was just holding Brown against the fence and got hit by the better strikes 2 out of the 3 rounds for sure. That being said, Battle is typically a high-paced fighter who's just going to stay on the front foot the entire time, just throw a barrage of punches, takedowns, etc. Not the most technical. On the ground, he's okay in terms of like the grappling. He can find a sub and so on. Mainly, Battle is just volume and pressure. There's nothing special about him otherwise. I can't really highlight his technique because it's just throw and shoot and whatever, then hold someone against the fence and hit them in the clinch. All he is pressure. On the Ruziboev side, he's... Okay, so on the regional scene, he wrestled a lot. In the UFC, he has not wrestled that much. He's mainly been a striker who's really looking for the big right hand, sometimes knees up the middle. He's been throwing a lot of spinning kicks also. He's pretty, like, versatile everywhere. He's well-rounded overall. That being said, when he throws his right hand, it literally looks like his hand is heavy. Like, he has to, like, chuck his right hand. It's not like he's just punching. It's like he's throwing an object. Because of that, it leaves him very open because his full, like, body weight is committed forwards. It's very strange. Maybe it's because he has, like, a very long, like... his reach isn't even that long. Maybe it's because he's so tall. I don't really know. But he has, like, almost trouble throwing his punch without, like, putting his body weight weirdly behind it. Because of that, I feel like Ruziboev is going to open up his hips constantly. We saw it against Dustin Strosfus, where Dustin would just wait for him to throw the right hand, and then he would just level change under it. Now, Dustin, to be fair, I do think is underrated and kind of disrespected, and he nearly did win that fight as a massive underdog. So, Brian Battle, who's probably just a higher-paced version of Dustin Strosfus here, maybe a little bit less power than Strosfus. I think Strosfus does have, like, borderline one-punch knockout power if he does land clean. But Battle's going to have a lot more pressure. He's going to shoot a lot more often. And Ruziboev does gas out in later rounds. So, as long as Battle doesn't get chinned early, I do think that I do think that he's going to overwhelm Ruziboev and probably just finish him in rounds 2 to 3. I don't think that Ruziboev is going to be able to survive a late fight unless he at least drops Battle early. And even if he does drop Battle early, I don't expect Battle to slow down. But even though skill for skill, you could probably say Ruziboev is the better fighter here, I think the Battle's pace is ultimately just going to break him. Battle does not defend his body. He doesn't defend anything, to be honest. I got Battle here skill for skill, and if it gets gritty, he can out-dog Ruziboev. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with the skill part, but I agree with the dog part for sure. Ursulton got T-Rex arms for that height. Yeah, agreed. DDP or Imvov. So I used to think Imvov would win. It's just with DDP's game planning, it's hard to say. But, like, so Imvov kind of has that Roberto Sildic, like, phenotype, for lack of a better word, where he's very powerful, very fast, and he could definitely use combinations to light up DDP. And DDP has trouble against those types of fighters, obviously, with him getting knocked out by Sildic. So I do think Imavov, of everyone on the feet, would definitely have the best chance of hurting and potentially finishing DDP. But I do think it's a very close fight. Battle versus Jusei was crazy. Yeah, it was. Yeah, the biggest problem that Battle did show during the Jusei fight also is that his defense was just non-existent. He was just walking through Jusei strikes. Works with Jusei because Jusei can't like knock someone down for his life. But against a power puncher, it's a little bit scarier. But I do think that he should have enough of a speed advantage going up a weight class here, durability advantage, and just pace advantage here. What about the grappling aspect between DDP and Imvov? DDP is just going to be better there, but not by a massive margin. I don't expect him to be able to like ragdoll Imvov by any means, but I do think it's going to turn into a mostly stand-up fight. He was just tougher in the fight, what you say? Yeah, and just better cardio, I would say also. A lot of it was that Jusei just could not handle the pace for an extended period of time. Alright. Battle of the 40-year-olds again. So, Barbosa, we all know, he is kind of the classic, like, I guess effectively Muay Thai striker with how he throws everything. A lot of spinning kicks, kicks to the body, spinning kicks to the head, etc. Pretty much the best highlight reel, in my opinion, if you look at his entire career. He looked really bad in his last fight. I don't know if it was just because Murphy was hard to hit and Barbosa just got tired after getting damaged early, or if like that was a greater sign that Barbosa's kind of done. Oh yeah, I didn't say my pick for the previous fight, my bad. So pick for Battle versus Ruziboev is going to be Battle by either late second round TKO or early third round TKO. I'm going to say late second round TKO. I might change my mind on that though. Really hate how much Battle drops his hands while not in the pocket. I think Ruziboev can catch him with those weird right hands he throws and you're talking about. It is definitely possible. It would not shock me at all if Battle got flatlined in round 1. I just think that, especially given the fact that Ruziboev is a little bit slow and Battle's going to be a bit faster coming up from 170, that it favors Battle. But yeah, anyone who's picking Ruziboev by first round TKO, I mean, I don't blame you. Battle by decision, 29-28, also possible. I did pick and I just forgot. Okay, fair enough. Barboza versus Klose we'll go back to. Okay, I talked about Barboza. Oh yeah, with the Murphy stuff, He looked really bad. Like, he kept losing balance whenever he was throwing some of his kicks. I don't know what was happening. Maybe he got so damaged in like round 1 or 2, I forget where he took more damage, that it was just too much of a problem. But yeah, he looked nothing like he has in his previous fights. That being said, of course, at least he made it to decision, so he's still durable. But it was not a good showing. Klose is almost as old as Barbosa. Not nearly as flashy, just very basic, like boxing, wrestling, and so on. Got absolutely murdered by Joel Alvarez in his last fight, but overall he's pretty fundamentally solid. He did have Dariush like mostly knocked out, then got overeager and got chinned. Klose is one of those fighters who's always going to be like, okay, he'll beat any fighter that he's supposed to beat, but usually he'll lose to any fighter that he's supposed to lose to. And I do think that he is supposed to lose to Barboza as the more dynamic and just better striker overall. The real question, of course, is Barboza just done? But as long as he looks like he looked pre-Murphy fight in literally any other fight, then he probably should be able to get it done. And I think he has a solid chance of finding a knockout here with how like slow Klose can be at times. The Klose got dropped by Joaquin Silva, for example. Like he's gotten rocked by people you really don't want to get rocked by. Joel Alvarez getting knocked out, that's not the biggest deal in the world. But some of these other losses and like struggles are not what you really want to see. Barbosa's washed, he's old and injured. Yeah, I agree. It's just, there's enough of a skill discrepancy for me to still pick Barboza. I'm going to say second round knockout, but I wouldn't be shocked if he lost either. It's another one of those fights. Why do you think you overpredict finishes? I do the same thing, and I think it's because I expect the fighters to make the decision they should make, then they don't. Yeah, same exact thing. I've tried to pull back on my assumptions that fighters will fight the way that they're supposed to, but I still definitely make the mistake, unfortunately. So it is what it is. There will usually be more decisions than I predict. Will there be a telling size difference since he's coming back up from featherweight? So even when Barbosa was fighting at 155, apparently he was always pretty small there. Like, he didn't really cut much weight. I think he was usually like 170 out of camp or something, which is pretty wild. So that being said, I think that he'll be fine. He's used to having a bit of a size disadvantage at 155. Unless Klose can just take him down repetitively, which I don't see happening, I don't think it will really matter. Hey, Ghost Rider. Klose will go the control route the whole fight and hold Barboza down if he gets rocked. He'll definitely try. I mean, if you're game planning for Klose here, yeah, you definitely want to wrestle and try to use all the size that you can. I think Barboza is going to be a little bit too fast for him, but again, it could work. I think Barboza doesn't really utilize the weight cut well. He's still ripped when fighting. It's not really about utilizing the weight cut well. It's that he's just not that big in general. So Barboza just doesn't cut much weight. It's not really about him like not putting back size on. It just never was there to begin with. I think it works for him though, because he's very speed oriented. So I don't think like he's one of those fighters that should put on more size by any means. Kyle versus Imavov, I just arrived. Leaning Imavov, long story short, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle pulled it out by any means. Do you think they should do D1 BJJ in college? I mean, I don't know what, probably not, just because they wouldn't really get enough of an audience, not gonna lie. If they can figure out how to like get an audience for it, then fair. But it's a problem because it's just not a mainstream sport. I have zero doubt in my mind that John Silva chins Diego. Yeah, same. Silly question, but who do you think is more likely to be future champion at flyweight? Van or Tyra? Tough question. I'm gonna very, very mildly lean Tyra because he's more versatile. But I think there's like very close to equal chance. Does D1 wrestling get much an audience anyway? It's not massive, but they do get an audience. You have to like BJJ to watch BJJ? Yeah, great. Alright, on to the next fight. So, This is another fight where the public sentiment has been a little bit weird to me, is a lot of people seem to think that Alexander Hernandez has a solid chance here, which I just don't see, and I'll get into why. So Hernandez, as most of you know, is kind of a power puncher in the first round. Then after that, he turns into like sort of well-rounded, just not good at anything, in all honesty. He can wrestle, he can strike, he can't really do much on the ground past like maybe getting you down and then holding you there for a little bit. His ground and pound isn't great, he has no submission threats and so on. On the feet, he has no real nuance, it's just speed and power. Like, there's nothing really beyond that. Hooper, on the other hand, I mean, he's of course had an issue with not having the most technical striking, but in terms of the grappling, in terms of the actual BJJ part, he's spectacular, obviously. His transitions are incredible, the way he floats is very good, etc. The biggest problem that I have with him on the ground is that sometimes he just decides to not throw ground and pound. So against, what's his name? Jim Miller. So against Jim Miller, I think he definitely could have finished Jim Miller at least 3 to 4 times if he just committed to punching on the ground. He was so determined to catch Jim Miller with like, what was it, like a banana split sub or something? Like one of those really weird ones where it's like, no one goes for this for a reason. It's just impossible to hit. So Hooper has some very interesting decision making, but on the ground, he's going to be many levels ahead of Hernandez. It doesn't even matter if Hernandez has good takedown defense because Hooper could literally just Imanari roll. Like, it doesn't matter how he gets it to the ground. He could pull guard for all it matters. Like, he's going to be able to find a submission very, very likely in this fight, in my opinion. Now, even if he cannot get it to the ground, which I don't think will happen, but it's possible. I guess Hernandez does have okay takedown defense. Maybe Hooper just cannot time anything to get it down. But even on the feet now, I think Hernandez only has the advantage in round 1. Hooper is fairly long, he's fairly tall, he's gotten good at using that length, and Hernandez just doesn't have the nuance to really punish Hooper for anything he does on the feet. So I think that as long as Hooper just doesn't flop, basically, like as long as he shows up at all, I think this is a very, very easy fight for him, and I think this is a fight made for him to get another like highlight submission. And I think that UFC was kind of annoyed that he didn't do that in the Jim Miller fight. The Jim Miller fight was like, okay, here, go sub go sub a vet with a name value, and then we'll give you a bigger fight from there. This is like, okay, you didn't get fraud checked, but you didn't get the highlight you needed. We still think you're going to be a star, so now go sub this guy who's not great. So I think that Hernandez he may have beaten Jim Miller on paper, but I think that he's a step down in competition in terms of how difficult he'll be for Hooper, because Hernandez does not have the same skill in terms of submission defense or anything like that. So I'm going with Chase Hooper, second round submission. I could easily see it being first round as well. Backpack rear naked choke, yeah, very possible. I think Islam loses to Jeff Neal in any top 10 welterweight. Jeff Neal specifically, maybe. Jeff Neal's a very, very bad matchup for Islam, but I don't think all 10 of the top welterweights. Chase Hooper by round 3 submission, and Hernandez tends to wilt in the late rounds. Yeah, agreed. Hernandez is going to need a flash KO, in my opinion. Yeah, for sure. Like, Hernandez's best chance is a knockout within the first 2 minutes. If he doesn't get that, I think, unless he made dramatic leaps since his last fight, it's going to go really badly for him. Who wins, DDP or Jones at light heavyweight? Good question. I think I unfortunately have to lean Jones being able to outpoint him. It's a question of if DDP's game plan is good enough. There's definitely stuff within DDP's style that I don't love against Jones, though, so I would have to lean Jones, but I'm never going to underestimate good game planning. Jim Miller is extremely good for his mileage, though. Yeah, he is. You already went over the main event? No, I'm going from the beginning of the event to the main event. So the main event will be the last analysis here. How would DDP win? So I do think that DDP's ability to find reads on the feet is absolutely wild. So there's a possibility he could make something happen. But all likelihood, no, he would probably lose. Who do you think wins, John versus Mavzar? I think it would be a very easy fight for John. Mavzar is way too hittable. He may get one takedown or something, but I don't even think he would get that. I think he would get chinned very quickly. And DDP by cage side police force. Fair enough. Alright. Number 1 John Silva Glazer? Hopefully, yes. I mean, I made a whole YouTube video about how he's spectacular, so. Chase Hooper, I think, is going to follow the same career trajectory as Jim Miller. He'll be a top-ish guy, but never fight for the title, and eventually become the crafty vet gatekeeper sort. That's very possible. I think that Hooper has time, and he's showing a lot of development, so I'm not, like, going to throw him into that category yet. But yeah, there's a chance where it's like, okay, his striking never gets good enough to the point where we can take him seriously as a top contender. Would not be surprised. John Silva versus Diego, in what round do you think he will knock him out? Round 1. I like John Silva, Wild Villains Part 2. Yeah, exactly. John Silva is godly good and fun to watch, said Emblem. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Okay, so for Andrade versus Godinez, I'm just going to glaze over this because we all know the deal here. Andrade is just going to throw wild hooks. She's powerful. If she can hit you, you're in trouble. Not the most technical. She's very powerful, willing to just blast strikes over and over. Entertaining, though. I can't, like, fault Andrade. In terms of earlier WMMA, she has had a much more entertaining career than most fighters, so respect to that, at least. Her takedown defense has not been spectacular. She got taken down and subbed by Blanchfield. She got taken down and subbed by Jasmine. Did she get taken down by someone else? I feel like there was someone else. Oh yeah, Valentina just took her down and mauled her. So anyone who has solid wrestling tends to take her down and maul her. On the other side, Godinez has decent boxing, but also has the wrestling to probably just take her down and maul her. I don't think it's going to be nearly as dominant as, say, Blanchfield or Jasmine or Valentina, because Godinez doesn't have that level of ground and pounder submission threat. But I think that she has the ability to control and just keep shooting the takedowns. This is probably going to be a relatively straightforward fight where Godinez just keeps shooting for all 3 rounds and probably gets a 30-27. Wouldn't be shocked if she was able to pick up a decision. If she messed with the angle of her slam in her last fight, she may have gotten a finish there because she was very close. She just needed to tilt forwards a little bit more and she would have gotten a finish, in my opinion. So it is kind of live. I'm not betting like the over 2.5 on this fight by any means, but it is probably a decision. Suarez as well, fair enough, yeah. Yeah, obviously, there's the caveat. Andrade could catch her. Same thing with any Andrade fight, and Godinez sometimes can be unreliable, but yeah. Godinez, official pick, 30-27 decision. Andrade does not care about MMA career for sure. What is the single best weapon in MMA? What is the... I assume you mean best strike in MMA. What are MMA fighters the worst at as a whole? What is the most impressive attribute you say in any fighter in MMA? Footwork. Just get very good footwork and you'll be better than 99% of fighters. Pound for pound, who wins, Ilya or DJ? Interesting question. I'm going to think about that one more before I give you a response. Godinez over 2.5 takedowns. Yeah, I'd take that. Do you think Yuri could beat Ankalaev? It's possible. Ankalaev doesn't do great in chaos. That's why Thiago Santos, like no knees Thiago Santos, dropped Ankalaev in just a very weird exchange because he just started like winging hooks and then caught Ankalaev. I could see Yuri catching a spinning elbow or some other like weird strike that just flatlines Ankalaev. But like technically, obviously, he's worse. So he has to embrace the chaos in that fight. Andrade just switches weight classes at every fight expecting different results. Yeah, true. What do you think of Elijah Smith? I mean, I don't think beating Kazuma really means much. We all knew what the outcome of that fight was going to be. So I think that he's okay, but he needs to show a lot more. Best base for MMA. It's a tough one. I don't hate boxing as a base. The biggest problem is that defense for boxing is terrible because they get used to having the big gloves. You could definitely argue Muay Thai. My biggest issue with Muay Thai is you have to like really learn how to adapt it to MMA, where you don't throw everything so rigid with full power and you get better at being reactive. So I would say probably Muay Thai if I really had to choose, but I don't really love any singular base in all honesty. Last 2 fights were flyweight, this one's strawweight. Yeah, I don't know. What did you pick Dolidze to beat Fluffy? Did Fluffy surprise you with his performance? What did he do in the fight that impressed you the most about him? So I thought it was pretty much a 50-50. If you saw my comments on that fight, I was like, okay, if Dolidze can't finish it early, he's probably screwed. It was a question of the fact that Fluffy was not going to have success on the ground early, and Fluffy is very hittable on the feet, and Dolidze hits hard. So if Dolidze connected with something clean in the early rounds, he could potentially finish it because Fluffy is kind of chinnable. If he can't get the finish in the early rounds, which is of course what we saw, then that's not a surprising result. He was always going to be able to wear out Dolidze and finish him. So I wouldn't say Fluffy really surprised me anywhere. Fluffy is good. I've made reels about how good he is before, so I definitely don't like underrate him or anything. But I definitely would like to see either the Adesanya or the RDR fight to say anything more. I would love to see Imavov at light heavyweight. So I think he has a good shot against Uncle Ive. Fair. Kickboxing is better than Muay Thai in terms of MMA, isn't it? The biggest problem is a lot of kickboxing again uses the bigger gloves, which I really hate because they don't develop good defense then. At least good defense for MMA. It might be fine for boxing and kickboxing. A DDP fight is arguably the hardest fight to predict. His technique is trash. I wouldn't say his technique is trash. I think it's an overblown narrative, but I'll talk about it when we get to that fight. So, GM3 versus Mikhail, I'm not going to make a prediction. The reason for that being is that Meerschaert was one of the first UFC fighters to follow my page, so I don't think I can make an unbiased prediction when it comes to him realistically. So I'll just break down the two fighters briefly and then move on from here. So GM3 has relatively technical striking, and he has dropped people in the past. He is a bit slow on the feet, though, of course. Obviously, his biggest strength is just taking it into deep waters, finding a sub in round 2 or 3. Overall, GM3 needs this fight to go late. Mikhail does not want it to go late. Mikhail does fade a bit. Mikhail has crazy power on the feet. Dropped Kevin Holland badly, even if the stats don't want to say that. But Mikhail definitely does not have the greatest takedown defense. I think it's around 50% or something right now. We saw that in the Kyle fight where he just got taken down until he got subbed. So this fight is really, does Mikhail get an early knockout? Does GM3 get a late sub? Or maybe Mikhail can just do more damage on the feet to a decision. So take your side there if you want to bet it. Otherwise, yeah, I'm not going to make an official prediction there. GM3 took Tom's out to deep waters is the code. Fair. Also baffles me how many MMA gyms open mat spar like a course footwork sucks. I mean, I'm fine with open mat sparring. You just have to make sure that everyone has enough space. To an extent, you have to open mat spar because it's just not feasible enough to get everyone into like an octagon or something for enough time. But you have to really be careful about how much space you give everyone. Who gets the next title shot at featherweight? Hopefully, John Silva gets a highlight and then gets the next shot. Fighting nerd, goat, Mikhail, Oleksiejczuk, yeah. Rufy taught Mikhail the slapping left hook into the heel, heel kick. That would be funny. DDP is a maestro of kicking. Fair. Bautista versus Umar. I have to lean Umar because ultimately Bautista can be a little bit spazzy and it can definitely get him taken down. But Bautista's a lot better than people wanted to say for a long time. I would not be shocked if Bautista beat Umar, but I do have to take Umar. Rufy versus BSD. I have to lean Rufy because realistically, BSD is so hittable, and Rufy obviously has ridiculous power. But that being said, I don't think that BSD's striking is going to look as bad as people expect, because obviously his coaches know that he can't just strike at distance with Rufy, rather. So I think that his coaches are going to try to get him to clinch very quickly, and then try to get it down from there. Chances are that Rufy is able to catch him with something coming in, but if he doesn't and he gets taken down, or BSD is able to take the fight into the later rounds, then BSD has a solid chance of a sub. I think it'll be Murphy/Pico, then Mobzar, then Volk retires. Mobzar maybe. I don't think Murphy/Pico are in a shot for in contention for a title shot, rather. If it had been Pico versus Mobzar, yeah, I think the winner of that would have gotten it. But now that it's Murphy-Pico, I think whoever wins needs one more fight. What do you think of RDR's performance against Whittaker? Honestly, I came away from that fight thinking both of them are not the top level anymore, which I talked about in my Instagram story. Where it's just, I don't know what Whittaker was doing. He was not turning off the fence quick enough. Maybe he just got so gassed that he couldn't, but it was really not a great showing from Whittaker, in my opinion. And RDR has 0 striking defense. He gets hit by every single straight shot anyone throws at him. Song or Umar? Interesting one. I'm going to lean Song, but it's tough. I think Song has a takedown defense and the power on the feet to give Umar problems, but I'm not confident. Pfeiffer versus Shara, who wins? Pfeiffer chins him in rounds. RDR versus Hernandez. Leaning Hernandez, but I wouldn't be shocked if RDR finished him with body knees. Volk just posted saying, whoever wins gets the champ, but doesn't say Pico or Murphy or John Diego. Yeah, so I'm very confident. The only case where one of the first two gets a title shot is if Pico just flatlines Murphy in a round. Then they might give him a title shot. But if it's a decision either way, or Murphy wins, even if Murphy wins by finish, I'm pretty confident they'll give the title shot to John if John wins. I think that both said it's a #1 contender. Yeah, they could say whatever they want. They're not going to get the shot. Who do you think wins between Islam and Shavkat? Interesting one. I'm going to lean Shavkat, just barely. What does Bautista do better than Umar? Striking, generally. His pacing is a lot better also. He can keep up a 5-round pace, while Umar really can't. RDR was never top level, yes, agreed. Rob was, but he's been a top contender for over a decade, yeah, also true. Can Corey do anything against Merab? Corey has much better grappling than O'Malley, so I don't think it's going to get finished. I don't think it's going to be as terrible as like O'Malley was by any means. But that being said, because he doesn't have power in his hands, his only real choice is to look for a flying knee, which is not the highest percentage, so definitely have to favor Merab there. Elton Zhang Ming Yang, champ potential. He has to get better defense first. He has the power to, but he can't be getting hit so much. Pound for pound, who wins, Mighty Mouse or John Silva? John Silva. Did Rob have the most longevity of a top 5 contender ever? Potentially. Do you think that by 2026-27, John Silva will be the #1 pound for pound? I don't, just because I think that Ilya has a solid chance of being that, or like JDM has a solid chance of being that, and they tend to favor people who have beaten a pound for pound like top fighter. So for example, if JDM beats Islam, he's probably going to go to pound for pound 1, and it's going to be hard to get him out of that spot. Or like if Ilya racks up a few more wins, like it's going to be hard to knock them out of those spots unless John were to move up and beat Ilya still at 155. But I don't think Ilya is going to be at 155 by the chance that, or by the time rather, that John is willing to move up. So I don't think we're ever going to see that fight realistically. Dustin Poirier had the most longevity of a top contender ever? Yeah, it's possible. Which Korean has the highest chance to become champ? You'd have to remind me a list of the current Korean fighters. If DDP wins, who do you think will have a better legacy, DDP or JDM? I mean, they're both early in their career, especially JDM, so that's hard to say. Who's your pick on UFC Shanghai, Walker or Ming Yang? Yeah, I have to pick Ming Yang, of course. I'm not going to be the most shocked in the world if Walker pulls something off, because Min Yang is hittable, but I have to pick Min Yang, yeah. Alright, we're going to get to a few more of the fights before I take more questions. Okay, very controversial take here. Anyone who was watching Contender series in the Discord server knows this. I thought, how do you say his name? Susurkaev, whatever. I thought his Contender series fight really looked rigged. because I've never seen someone get hit by like a not even fully clean teep kick, start screaming and crumple. It looked very strange to me, especially on replay. Like, it's not like we saw, like, oh, it was just a weird shot that broke a bone. It wasn't even like it hit liver. It was like, what did I just watch? I think that he's a good fighter, offensively at least, but I don't know what the hell that was, unless, like, his opponent was paid to lose. Those toe kicks seem nasty. Yeah, but it wasn't even like the toe really dug in. Like, the scream is a little, yeah, exactly. Like, you know, had he just, like, gotten impaired by it, then gotten hit one more time and fell over, I would have been like, okay, fine. But starting to scream like that is like, what? It really felt rigged. I know that the guy is not a good fighter, to say the least, right? His opponent, whatever his name was. But that looked weird. Hey, Reaver. Dude looked like when Solid Snake dies in the games. The Dana White Contender's opponent last fight is flagged for legitimacy on topology. Yeah, exactly. So I would not be surprised if he was there to lose that fight, to say the least. It looked very weird. Now, granted, Susurkaev is a good fighter. He's offensively is pretty crazy. Has good takedown defense. His combinations are extremely fast, extremely powerful, extremely accurate. His flying knees are nice as well. So there's not much to complain about with him except his striking defense, which doesn't exist. He'll kind of just throw his arms up. It's not even a proper guard. He kind of just hopes he can eat the shots or they happen to fall on his guard. So when he fights an opponent who can actually like have pinpoint accuracy strikes, they're going to chin him. But until then, he's probably going to get a bunch of highlights. As long as like he didn't need a rigged opponent. I guess we'll find out very quickly. I do think that he will win this fight, spoiler, but I do want to see him get an actual win before I say too much about him with how weird that looked. Middleweight Park, other Park, Young, Choi. Maybe Choi at this point. Choi solid. Alha does just seem terrible. It's possible. I thought he was making odd decisions in the clinch prior to the KO. Yeah, it's like Susurkaev just decided to not get out of the clinch for 2 minutes. Like, yeah, he defended all the takedowns, cool, but what are you doing? Like, I know it probably wasn't, but it very, very much felt like a scripted fight. I think we'll see UFC being more obvious on building prospects now. I mean, it as giving them bums with no chance. They keep bringing people just to one-fight contracts, letting them go after dying. Yeah, fair. Alright, then on the other side, Eric Nolan is... I mean, he's an okay fighter. He's like... His striking is a little bit too loose, right? So he'll throw like hooks and overhands, and he will overextend on them a lot. He'll get thrown a little bit off balance, and I think that's going to be his downfall in this fight. I think he's going to throw a combination, get a little bit off balance, and then Susurkaev is just going to like jump in with something and chin him. Nolan has never been TKO'd, even though I believe he has 2 or 3 losses, I'm forgetting. But he's going to get TKO'd here. I mean, unless Susurkaev's like entire career is completely illegitimate, he should be able to chin Nolan relatively easily, in all honesty. Respect to both of them for taking a very short notice fight. We'll see if like everything goes well with the weigh-ins and such, but this should be a round 1, another finish for Susurkaev, where it's just to get him a highlight reel finish, as you were saying, Raver. We're becoming boxing, yeah, apparently, unfortunately. Unrelated hot take, but Stipe is the most overrated champion of all time. Dude legit fought more geriatrics than McGregor. I don't agree there. Heavyweights overall tend to be a little bit on the older side, but he fought the next person up every time. It's not like he was just like cherry picking older fighters by any means. But like, even if you look at the same with like Aspinall's career, like he fought like 44-year-old what's his name? Andrei Arlovsky, right? So you could say that with any heavyweight realistically. Alha is a quitter, he could have just faked it to get out of there. That's also possible. Ankalaev versus Tom. It's an interesting fight because Ankalaev is much more technical. I don't think Ankalaev has the power to beat Aspinall, but it would be fun to see at some point. If JDM beats Islam, the next will be JDM versus Ilya. Who do you think will win? I very, very mildly lean JDM, but I would not be surprised if Ilya won. Nolan gets the upset by round 2 TKO after Susurkaev gasses. Would not be the most shocking thing in the world. I don't think Nolan's defense is going to hold up, but if he does survive round 1, his chances go up significantly. Could be rigged, but I've seen Talha quit because of his cardio. Fair enough. And by rigged, I don't mean like the UFC rigged it. I just mean that something was wrong and he didn't actually hurt his opponent. Heavyweights can get away with being older, exactly, yeah. Heavyweights are just bad, that also, yes. Out of Topuria, Talbot, Wellmaker, Oliver, and Beksot, which one do you think has the highest ceiling at 135? Beksot. Stipe beat Francis enough for me to think he's good. Yeah, that is true as well. He fought bad opponents. Verdum literally ran at him chin in the air. Yeah, but that's all heavyweights. Like, Verdum destroyed Cain Velasquez, so is the best person at the time. But yeah, heavyweight is garbage. If we're talking about geriatrics, John Jones is the goat of beating old men. Yeah, exactly. Hey, Bob Builder. Thought Alexandre Topuria versus Wellmaker was official. Was excited that time. Yeah, it was unfortunate. That was a false rumor. Pico seemed very nervous at the press conference. The dude was stuttering and had bad body language. I don't know if I was the only one who noticed that. I don't really think that how people look at like press conference and like face-offs and all that ever really matters, in all honesty. Like, fighters do weird stuff. Like Strickland can't look at someone in the eyes. John Jones always looks down. Like, fighters are weird in terms of how they behave in those situations. I don't really think it matters, in all honesty. I'm gonna mute myself for a second, drink some water. Alright. Let's get through a few more fights and I'll answer some more questions. So, we'll speed run a few of these and then get to the main card, especially because I think, let's see. Oh, we are on the main card now. Never mind, it's fine. Okay. So, Tim Elliott, very dynamic in everything he does. Very atypical striker. He was like the original, like, awkward fighter. Now everyone says it about DDP, but Tim Elliott was the original version of that. Biggest problem is he's 40 years old and coming off a 2-year layoff. Like, I think the narrative going into this fight is like, oh, Asakura just got subbed by Pantoja. Elliott has good wrestling. He could fraud check him again. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but the level of difference between Pantoja and Elliott is insane. And Asakura didn't do terribly against Pantoja by any means. He did stuff a few takedowns. He did get up once or twice, and he did like defend reasonably well. It's just Pantoja who can sub pretty much anyone in that division. So I don't think the comparison really makes any sense in the end of the day. On the feet, Elliott can hit you with a lot of weird stuff, but most of it isn't going to do any damage. He doesn't really have power or really put power into anything he throws. Asakura is a weird fighter because he's very, like, in the past, he was very reliant on pride rules. He liked to hurt his opponent, get them kind of like towards the ground, and then just start unleashing soccer kicks. So I do think that removing that from his arsenal did definitely cause some issues. Granted, he's had a while to adapt now, and I do think he will be okay. Asakura has a very strong left hook. He's knocked out a lot of people, or at least rocked them with it. His left hook, right overhand combo is solid. He will just throw a traditional 1-2 as well sometimes. He has more wrestling than people would anticipate for how his last fight looked. Like, he has taken a lot of fighters down and beaten them up. He has a lot of power. Like, I think people are genuinely underrating his power. He had Manel Kape very rocked in their first fight. He did barely win that by decision, partially because he gassed himself out. But he had Manel Kape like 80% knocked out at one point, I would say. Asakura's biggest problem, in my opinion, is that he's a little bit too reckless on the feet. Sometimes he'll just start winging hooks. And he's also a little bit chinny. So with the combination of the two, he can definitely get clipped and get put out. That happened with his second fight against Kape and his fight against Horiguchi and so on. But Elliott is not really going to be the one to chin you. And Asakura's takedown defense is solid and has gotten much better. So the reality is we're just having someone who doesn't have much power on the feet and can get hit and is 40 years old and has had a 2-year layoff against someone who has one-shot knockout power. So Asakura very likely wins this by knockout. I'm going to say first round knockout. It could be second. I'm going to say first, though. And it's unfortunate. I like Elliott. I will be rooting for Elliott, especially all that's happened to him. Like, his life has kind of been bullshit recently, but he's probably getting put out, unfortunately. 40-year-olds in flyweight is an automatic death sentence. Yeah, exactly. Mokaev said Pantoja is just Tim Elliott with hunger. God. Kai getting a highlight reel finish would be great for the division. True. Elliott will not eat the knee that Pantoja ate. True. Kai Asakura by masterclass K-pop performance. Fair. Volkanovski versus Mavzar. Volkanovski should win fairly easily. He'll just stuff the takedowns, piece him up on the feet. Any stock in Elliott not being KO'd since 2009? I think that Elliott is relatively durable, but he wasn't getting hit by people with the power of Asakura, and he also wasn't 40 years old at the time. So while I understand the narrative, I don't think his chin is going to hold up here. Usman or Hughes? I'm going to pick Hughes. I think he's just the better fighter. Kai Asakura is going to make a statement in this fight. UFC made this main card opener for a reason. They think Asakura is going to get the finish 100%. We believe in Elliott to stink out at 20. I assume you mean at 29, 28, but fair. Elliott's likable, sucks to see his fight. Yeah, exactly. I would have rather he got another person his age. Super hot take, but I feel like Mokaev could have been a future champ. I don't agree with you there. I don't think Mokaev was particularly good at anything, in all honesty. If you look at Mokaev's fights, all he was good at was coming back later in fights when he was getting destroyed early. Like let's look at Mokaev's fights. Oh, I should see it from Elliott's, right? So Mokaev's fights here, right? Okay, good performance against Cody Durden. No argument there. Charles Johnson, 12 strikes to 12 strikes, just spamming takedowns. No submission threats, no danger, nothing. Just literally can't do anything except spam takedowns. Malcolm Gordon, not UFC level, but fine, fair performance. Jafel Filo is losing early, gets in the really bad heel hook, has to come back later in the fight with a completely compromised knee. Now, Filo isn't bad, but he's not even ranked, if I remember correctly. So we're not talking about like a top-level fighter that Mokaev had problems with. We're talking about like, okay, you're dealing with like mid to higher ranked, unranked fighters that you're really struggling with. But fine, like let's even assume that that's a slip-up, right? Then we go to Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott is winning 2 rounds against Mokaev. We're talking about 38-year-old Tim Elliott is winning 2 rounds against Mokaev, and then finally gets subbed in round 3 after making a mistake. You're down 2 rounds and had to come back against 38-year-old Tim Elliott. Then Alex Perez is coming back after a massive layoff and blowing his entire knee up, basically. Is going life and death with Alex Perez and can't take him down. Alex Perez is not a bad fighter, sure. But if you're a future champion, you're not going life and death with Alex Perez. Like Figgy and Pantoja subbed Alex Perez and won. It's very doable, right? Then Manel Kape fight is a staring contest where he gets a decision that could have easily gone against him. So I haven't seen anything from Mokaev that makes me think that he's even a top 5 fighter. Like, I think that someone like Van or Tyra would absolutely walk through him. Rewatching the Pantoja fight, it wasn't as bad as people make it seem. His takedown defense looked fine. Pantoja just found his back like he does to everyone. Yeah, exactly. Like, Asakura does not have bad wrestling or bad takedown defense. It's just Pantoja things. Thoughts on Prates Neal going the distance? I don't think it will, but we'll get to that in a second. Watching this card with friends who haven't seen MMA before, word they'll get bored. What fight should we start watching? Okay, good question. Let's see. This fight should be reasonable. I think this fight will be action-packed. It's flyweight. Okay, this fight could be kind of bad, but then this fight should be action-packed also. Like, this is a card where you can start from the beginning. The only fight that I think like could be really slow is this one. So you could genuinely just start from the beginning, because this card genuinely doesn't have any really bad fights. Appreciate the content, really love the detailed analysis, always tune in to hear your text. Thank you. I think Kai by TKO, bad drop and follow-ups. Yeah, very possible. I think the flying knee. I'm calling that Asakura is probably going to like have to defend a takedown or two, and then gets the timing and just blasts a flying knee and puts out Elliott, unfortunately. Grab the shorts to avoid a knee bar against Cop. Yeah, he did grab the shorts, that is true. Mighty Mouse versus Bradley Martin. Mighty Mouse in like less than a minute. Chocolate chip or vanilla. Depends on the day. People overrate out of Usman. I saw people say Usman would beat Ilya easily. Yeah, Usman Nurmagomedov is not great. I'd skip the flyweights. While it won't be the highest level fight, it will be action-packed, so I wouldn't say this is a fight you want to skip. Like, unless you're worried, like, oh, I don't want to see not the highest level, this should still be a fun fight. Alright, let's go to Jared versus Paige. Now, real disclaimer about this fight. I'm heavily biased against Paige, and I will say that openly. I despise him as a human being. I think his style is atrocious. And this always surprises people when I talk to them, because I also started off as a karate stylist, so people assume that I would like another karate stylist. Paige, in my opinion, has an extremely amateurish style. Everything he does is reliant on basically 3 blitzing combos, and if you look at his feet, you can see exactly what he's going to do every single time. He always jumps forwards before he blitzes, very predictably. He doesn't fake it efficiently as well. He does use feints, but they look nothing like his actual blitzes. So if you just watch tape, look at the difference, and then watch his feet during the fights, you can predict exactly what Paige is going to do the entire fight. Now, that being said, seems like a lot of fighters have not figured that out yet. So it still can work, and I'm not ruling it out working against Jared just because I don't like the style. Now, Jared on the other... Okay, so actually going a bit more in depth with Paige, his combos are usually blitz jab, blitz overhands, or blitz uppercut. Now, after he blitzes, sometimes he hooks the legs and try to shove you, sometimes he throws a spinning elbow, and so on. Every once in a while, he'll jump in with the flying knee, hoping that like you shoot to try to counter his blitz type of thing, but as long as you keep your head on the opposite side, it'll usually be okay. Other than that, Paige doesn't have much. He has no real takedown defense. He has nothing really off of his back. If you get him down, you can probably keep him there. I know people like to point to the fact that like, oh, he got up a bunch of times against Logan Storley. As Logan Storley, I mean, seems like a good guy, not a UFC level fighter, realistically. So yeah, Paige is pretty simple. You know what's coming. If you get hit by it, he has the power to put you out potentially. But against UFC guys, he hasn't really seemed like he has spectacular power. Jared on the other side, interesting fighter. Obviously, ridiculous power for this weight class in like the basic things that he throws. Very strong calf kicks. The whole southpaw jab concept against Whitaker is what set up DDP's like win against Whitaker, essentially, because DDP basically just watched how Jared had success against Whitaker, copied that, and knocked him out with it. So Cannonier definitely is somewhat innovative, let's say, in how he fights. He can find approaches against fighters that people have not necessarily seen before. His calf kicks being dangerous may play a role in this fight, because one of Paige's problems is that he's very susceptible to the calf kick, especially during the blitzes. So if you do not trust your reaction time during the blitz, the easiest thing to do is when you see the bounce, blast a low kick, because it will take all the power out of Paige's blitz, and he'll probably just fall, and then you can either just reset, or you could try to jump on him. You can, of course, just shoot a takedown with your head on the opposite side when Paige blitzes as well, which feeds you the hips and usually gets you an easy takedown. So Jared definitely has paths to victory here. And I'm biased against Paige, so don't necessarily bet on what I'm going to say here, but I am going to lean Jared catching something here and then getting the knockout, probably by ground and pounds. Paige could dance on the outside, potentially to a decision. But if Jared just focuses on the calf kicks, or even just pushes Paige against the fence and just tries to take him down, because Paige doesn't really have anything there are definitely very clear ways to beat Paige here. Why do you hate him as a person? I have a reel going into that, but he's held on to subs late for no reason. He likes to mock people after fights. He showboats way too much during fights. I understand some showboating during fights, but it's like it's his entire personality. I just like he loves to and it's not even just that, it's that he's a complete hypocrite, right? Because if you want that to be your personality, fine. But then don't be like, oh, everyone should have a traditional martial artist mindset of pure respect and everything, and then just be a serial showboater and like hold on to subs late and all that bullshit. That's what his dad did. I mean, I don't hold people responsible for what their parents did, of course, but yeah, I mean, that's obviously not going to help anyone's perception. Jared has underrated ground and pound. Yeah, if he gets MVP down, I think he TKOs him right there. Over 85.5 significant strikes combined. In this fight, probably not, honestly. What type of fight analyzer are you? Some are statistical, some are previous fights, MMA math type. What are you in your words? I am very much about tendencies and patterns, right? I don't think that just because one fighter beat another fighter and that fighter beat another or something like that, then fighter one is going to win. But I think that the patterns that you show in your fights are generally going to show at your next fights. Very few fighters are good at transforming how they fight to fight. If you see a pattern that one fighter is going to exploit and one fighter is going to exude and the other fighter's style naturally exploits, then ultimately that's how you know that the other fighter's going to win. What do you think about Fluffy Hernandez, future title shot contender? Very possible. I mean, his style is very good for that division. No chance over 85. Yeah, I agree with you. It should be lower. The Brunson elbows, yeah. Crushing cans forever isn't very cool either. Yeah, exactly. MVP has 23 wins with 20 coming against people with like practically negative records. MVP's footwork sucks, but he's still tall and rangy, outpoints everyone anyways. Yeah. Mind breaking down the dynamic of Elliott JDM fight you mentioned. So, yeah, so JDM wants to use his superior distance in that fight and really try to use the fact that he's more dynamic on the feet. Because JDM is by far the more dynamic boxer. You could argue who's the better boxer because Elliott's footwork is extremely good and probably better than JDM's, but JDM's combos are significantly better and less predictable. Elliott is of course trying to just stalk him, use his footwork to get him into a corner and blast him. So JDM is going to win the minutes of that fight. It's a question of if JDM wins enough minutes that he finds a finish, or if Elliott finds that one moment first, in my opinion. Oracles and notice are valid. Creatures of habit, yeah, exactly. What's good? Hey, do you trust Jared to game plan? So, I don't trust Jared to really game plan much, but it's the fact that Jared's game plans tend to usually fall in this direction, right? He really does like the calf kicks a lot of the time, and he's fine holding people against the cage. So, he doesn't need to do that much outside of his normal game plan. Now, fighters are weird. Sometimes they like to change their game plan when their game plan should work, so you never know. But all he has to really do is what he pretty much normally does. MMA math is literally the best example of correlation and causation not being the same thing. Yeah, agreed. Why don't fighters counter MVP more? He's really easy to counter. I think they look too much at his hands. If you just look at someone's, if you just look at a karate striker's hands, you're going to be too slow to counter them. If you look at their feet, you can anticipate what they're going to do, and counter them. Thoughts on Lucas Tracy? I mean, I have no idea what he is. I still have not figured out if Lucas Tracy is like satire or like not, or what the deal is. So, are you saying previous performances can predict future performances? Very typically, yes. You can estimate trajectories. So if a fighter looks like they're improving a certain skill, then you can try to say like, okay, in the next fight, I think they're going to be this much better. I think they're going to fix these holes and so on. But generally, their style and their trajectory is relatively predictable. Cannonier has been hit or miss. Great win against Brunson, Vittori, and Robocop, but the rest have been weird point fights. Yeah, that is true. Like, if someone wants to say, like, oh, this is going to be just like the Adesanya fight where he's just following him around and doesn't isolate him, it's possible. What makes me think otherwise is the fact that Jared against Imavov had the game plan of really trying to use his weight against him and hold him against the fence and drain him. So, if he does that here, I think he'll have success. Funny that the taller one comes from an underweight class. Yeah, true. I honestly see a world where the weight strength difference is too much and just wrestles him to decision. That is fair. JDM versus Ilya feeds families 100%. Or Ilya versus JDM. Fair. MVP's footwork doesn't suck. It's just predictable at times, and his blitzes are predictable, but he's so quick it covers it. Yeah, I would say it's... Sucks might be an exaggeration for sure, but I would not say it's spectacular footwork either, by any means. Cannonier isn't a great game planner, but he's kind of like a Jeff Neal style in the sense he's disgustingly bad matchup for against a specific kind of fighter. Agreed. May algebra, valid. MVP, you just have to take him down, though. Yeah, that is true. Do you think Jared's tendency to do the chicken dance at all concerning against his style blitz like MVP? I mean, if he gets hit clean, he might be in trouble, for sure. I would not be shocked if Jared got shinned here. Lucas thinks Islam is the GOAT. That's a take, to say the least. What was your last prediction for Kai versus Tim? I said first round TKO. Oracle, what state are you from? New York. Do you think Cannonier will have a tough time finding the range and catching shots on the feet? If Cannonier just tries to fight from a distance, then yeah, he's dumb. I have nothing else to say. If he does anything besides throwing calf kicks and then trying to get him against the fence and or get a takedown, then I have no idea what he's doing. Can Drakus become light heavy champ? It is possible. I think he has a decent shot against Ankalaev. This is the only time I would turn a blind eye to a cage smudge performance. Valid. Who's the best footwork in UFC history? Personally, I think it's TJ. I think it probably is Ilya right now, to be honest. And I think, like, even in UFC history, it is probably Ilya. I predict Cannonier by round 3 to 4 ground and pound. It's only a 3-round fight, but 3 could be correct, yeah. Cannonier gets rocked by everything that's KO'd by nothing, rather. Yeah, that is true. What type of odds of Cannonier sub are? I don't think Cannonier sub is going to happen. I don't think he has that ability, to be honest. Waldo is the best footwork. Crazy. You were from New York, me too. Nice. Have you seen McGregor's recent training footage? Yeah, I saw it. I don't think it really says much, in all honesty. Like, he's a little slower than he used to be, but that's not surprising given that he's much bigger now. So, we'll see what happens. Which welterweights do you think can beat a prime GSP? Honestly, I don't know if any of the current ones can yet. I think that once JDM reaches his prime, it's very possible, but I don't think he would yet. Cannonier said he wants to get his hands on MVP, so I think he will get a takedown. Valid. And why you were Columbia? I mean, for colleges? I mean, they're both super expensive, but I mean, at least Columbia has a better, like, reputation, I guess, kind of. I think Prime Usman has a good shot. I've thought the same, but I think the reality is that while he can neutralize the wrestling, most likely, GSP is just more versatile on the feet. Islam's legacy is very overrated. His best win is Volk. After that, his resume starts going down. Rafael Makano on 24 hours notice. Yeah, I agree with that. How old are you? How much experience do you have in training, if any? I don't answer my age stuff on here. In terms of experience training, I mean, I've been training since I was 3, I'll say that much. Fight that never happened is GSP versus Whitaker. True. Alright, we'll go to the next fight quickly. Okay, so Neal versus Prates is an interesting one, and that's partially because the first time this was scheduled, I was going to pick Neal. And that time, I do think that he would have had a solid chance at winning, because Prates on the back foot was such an easily exploitable, like, I don't know what you'd call that, like, section of his game, I guess. But now that he's seen that in the Gary part, and it's been thoroughly exploited, I am pretty confident that all the fighting nerds will have worked on since then is correcting it. Obviously, they're a very statistically based and very thorough fight camp. So I don't think Prates is going to go into this fight with the same weaknesses. The other thing I noticed when I was rewatching film on Neal is he doesn't blitz as much as I would like to be fighting someone like Prates. If Neal was blitzing a lot and kind of throwing a lot of combos going forwards, I would be more inclined to pick him here. But he's probably going to go forwards a bit, reset, go forwards a bit, reset, and it's going to be one of those fights where eventually he probably gets caught on the end of a punch and gets hurt. Neal is very durable. I don't think this is going to be easy for Prates. But I think Prates does just have that otherworldly power, to be honest. So I think that Neal will have probably early success, but then he will back up at some points and then start eating way too much damage, and I think it's probably going to be a bad knockout. I think it's probably going to be something like the Leech knockout, where he's probably going to get staggered a few times, but he's tough and he's very durable and stay in it, and then probably get knocked out badly after that. Love me some Jeff Neal valid. Your chat is filled with Italians, Oracle. Fair enough. Neal struggles against lanky strikers. It's like he can't find the range against them. Yeah. And he's not good at just throwing, right? If Neal was a fighter who would just be like, oh, I can't get the range. Okay, let me just throw stuff until he falls. And which he could do because he's kind of durable and he has the boxing skill to do it. So if he was a fighter who had that mentality, I'd be like, okay, he has a solid chance here. But he's probably not going to do it realistically. Over 10.75 minutes. I'd lean under, but I'm not going to be surprised either way. I'm going to say Prates second round TKO. Shavkat, Neal, or Gary Neal ain't the same fighter. Agreed. How do you score the Prates versus Gary fight? I think 48-47 Gary made sense. Round 3 KO, that's possible. Do you think Cannonier 1+ takedown at plus 175 is a good bet? I would say it has a positive EV. If you're not worried about like winning every single bet and you're like, oh, I just want to take a shot at this, then yeah, it's not bad. Prates is so fun to watch. I'm excited for this fight. Really hope Neal doesn't decide to stall it out in the clinch. I don't think he's going to, yeah. Neal doesn't like lateral movement, that is true. Do you think Rob would have beaten GSP for the middleweight title? No, I don't think so, to be honest. Who do you think will win, Hamzat or DDP in a 3-round fight? We'll cut to that soon. Southpaw versus Southpaw favors Neal, in my opinion. I'm very convinced that Prates is going to fight this fight in Orthodox, because Prates likes to have opposite stances. And he is a switch fighter. Who would have won, Romero or GSP? I think Yuo would have knocked him out. I think GSP would have had a very safe approach against Romero. Like a very, very jab-heavy game plan. Kind of like the same game plan he had against Koscheck, even though that was just a torture Koscheck, but a different story. But I think it would have been a plan like that, where they would have been like, okay, let's just avoid his explosive power and just win a decision. And I think it probably would have worked. Maybe like 3 times out of 10 Yuo catches him, but I think GSP probably wins that like 7 times out of 10. What's next for Prates if he wins on Saturday? I'm not positive. I think it really depends how dominantly he wins. Alright, let's get to the co-main event. So, this has been like the very controversial odds fight on this card, because Murphy is the underdog. I think he's around like plus 130, plus 140 right now. Pico, well, being 13-4, while Murphy's undefeated against UFC competition, is somehow like minus 170 or something. Pico, if you have not seen him in the past, is... Okay, so to talk about his story a bit. He was a very good wrestler, I believe, in high school. He went to the Olympic trials, and then I think he missed the Olympics by a single point in wrestling. So he has that level of wrestling skill. Then he went more so into boxing, spent a lot of time, did Golden Gloves, whatever, spent a lot of time at a boxing gym, and then went into MMA from there. Rushed way too much. He started in Bellator, fought fights like he had to finish them in under a minute, and then just got chinned like once or twice because of that. One of his losses was a weird injury, so it was a weird one. I don't really count that one against him. But otherwise, overall, he is a fighter who will shoot takedowns, but doesn't really do that much with them on the ground. Like, maybe he'll look to land some strikes, but he doesn't have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So even when he gets them down, he can't hold them down. So the biggest problem is unless he immediately lands big strikes, they're just going to scramble back to the feet. On the feet, he is a very power-heavy boxer. So he's going to look to basically hide a massive hook out of nowhere. There is some nuance to it, right? He's not like one of those fighters who's just winging stupid hooks. I'm not going to say his boxing's by any means that bad, but he's not really putting like complex combos together. It's not like he's using footwork to cut you off and throw things. So as a fighter, there isn't as much nuance as I would like for him getting a high-level, relatively high-level striker. Murphy, on the other hand, yes, he does not have spectacular takedown defense. And that might be why Pico is the favorite, because Murphy will likely get taken down. But the reality is that Murphy is also very good at getting back to the feet. And if Pico shoots 7 takedowns and then Murphy gets back to the feet 7 times, Pico's going to start getting tired and the 8th, 9th, 10th takedowns aren't going to come. Murphy on the feet has a lot more striking nuance. Of course, just went 5 rounds with Barboza and did very well. Well, not just, but went 5 rounds with Barboza and did very well there. Then, of course, has fought, He fought Ige and Emmett since. Yes, he did have some trouble against both Ige and Emmett, but Ige and Emmett are both better strikers than Pico is, in my opinion. Now, there is the possibility that Pico has evolved significantly since his last fight, because I know he spends a lot of money on training, and it has been a while since he fought. That being said, this is just not a good matchup for him, because he's not going to hold Murphy down, and on the feet he's not a good enough striker to chin Murphy, in my opinion. The interesting thing about the Evloev matchup for Pico was that there was a chance that Pico would just negate all of Evloev's takedowns, and then be able to do a little bit better on the feet, since Evloev is, of course, not a striker. This matchup, I feel like, is worse for him, because I don't think he really has much a path to victory outside of landing a bomb, which is possible, but I really can't favor it here. So I'm going to say Murphy wins a 29-28 decision, with him dropping round 1 because of like 4 or 5 takedowns. What did you have in green versus Ferrer since it got cancelled? I had Ferrer second round TKO. Someone bet 10k on Murphy. Fair. It'll look like Murphy versus Emmett. Very possible, yeah. I hope Pico wins. Seems like a cool guy. Fair enough. Murphy has fought 3 heavy-handed wrestlers back-to-back, and we think this one just might get it done this time. Yeah, exactly. If Pico had good combos in BJJ, he'd be amazing. True. Pico plus 1 takedown is minus 1500. That's crazy. I have a big problem with Murphy being basically the co-main. I honestly have more of a problem with Pico being the co-main than Murphy being the co-main, because Murphy might be a little bit boring, but at least he's kind of earned it via his time in the UFC. Pico is debuting. Like, I don't know why they're putting him this high on the card. Like, I would have preferred this below Jeff Neal versus Carlos Prates. High IQ, no emoting, Romero versus DDP. I don't think Romero would have game planned well enough to beat DDP, to be honest, even like when not emoting and just standing like a statue. But it would be a good fight. I would lean DDP mildly. I think Murphy's lateral movement and elusiveness is going to give Pico a lot of problems. Yeah, agreed. I like the way Murphy uses elbows with the shell, could be a tool to use, yes. Pretty much guaranteed decision. I wouldn't say guaranteed. I mean, I would not even be shocked, in all honesty, if Murphy finished this fight in round 3. Like, he could hit a knee once Pico started slowing down or something like that. It's probably a decision, but I wouldn't be shocked. I don't think Pico's a worse striker than Emmett that just spams overhands. Even though Emmett just spams overhands, he at least has setup with like his footwork and his movement and stuff like that, which makes it somewhat effective. Like, Emmett has used them to do decently against good strikers. So I do think that Emmett is a better striker than Pico. Curious about your opinion on Barbosa fight. I picked Barboza. It's just a question of if Barboza is completely washed or not, bluntly speaking. But I did pick Barboza. This guy's a 0-inch reach. He's not beating Murphy. Leg reach, but yes. GSP or DDP at middleweight? I'm going to lean GSP there. Are you impressed by Vinicius Oliveira at all? What do you think his ceiling is? I'm not impressed, to be honest. Like, his last fight went about exactly as I expected. But that means he didn't, like, exceed my expectations at all. And I think he's way too hittable. And I think when he fights a fighter with reasonable cardio, that's going to be a massive problem. Volk to O'Malley versus Volk. Volk just probably takes him down nonstop. Can you do a vid on how you go about breaking down film so I could do it myself? It's really hard to do a vid on that. I've tried, but I'll see what I can do. What are some of these matchups people are commenting, like, are real? GSP or Hamza? GSP. Do you think Morales has got a good chance at dominating welterweight rankings? He's big. We'll really see when he fights Edwards. I think that the Edwards fight will show us a lot. Is Chimaev versus Rob Font confirmed? No, it is not. If it is, I would favor oh god, I'm blanking on his name, but Chimaev, yeah. I would favor him. But Font is like that fighter who fraud checks people, so you don't know. Alright, yeah, let's get to the main event. So, I have a very controversial take about this fight. I don't think Chimaev is very good at pretty much anything. Which I know is very controversial. Or I shouldn't say pretty much anything. I think the one thing Chimaev is extremely good at is once he works to the body lock, he's very good at being so sticky that you cannot do anything. So if he works to the body lock, he's the most dangerous fighter in the UFC. He will use minor like positional changes to get you down, keep advancing position, and get a finish. So given that singular game plan and the ability to execute it, fair enough, he's very good. Even in the wrestling, Chimaev is not that good. Because if you look at his actual takedowns, they are all explosiveness oriented. Like, I went into it in the reel, and I think I posted on YouTube Shorts also. But the way that Chimaev shoots is he basically just dives at the feet. Like, his chest is low, his head is low, so there's no leverage once he gets to the legs and such. He's just using pure speed and power and just trying to drive and just praying he gets to the body lock from there. Now, he is so fast and explosive early that it works. He's able to use it to get to the body lock so efficiently that he's able to do well from there. However, as I talked about in the reel, when we get into round 2, round 3, and in this fight potentially round 4, you don't have round 1 explosiveness, and people are sweaty. So just diving at the feet like that stops working. We saw that with Usman, where it just started looking pathetic how some of the shots were. Because Chimaev does not shoot reactively, like he'll never bait out a strike and then shoot. Chimaev will also never like work you to the fence and then shoot. Chimaev doesn't set up his shots at all, and he doesn't use technical shots. He just shoots and then tries to like transition from there. Yes, his ability to switch to a single leg is solid as well, right? But if he cannot start that grappling, that like chain wrestling, then it is very problematic for him. Because that's all he has. On the feet, he has power, same thing as his wrestling, right? He is very athletic, he is very talented, so he can knock people out. The southpaw jab is very efficient because he is right-hand dominant, and he will just like pump it out there, and people tend to walk into it because of like they're trying to exploit the fact that he stands changing and should have worse defense from there. So fair, he does have the ability to hurt you on the feet, right? But a lot of his things are just lunging in, sloppy kicks where he's not flexible enough to throw them properly, dropping his hands at random points, trading in the pocket with his hands down. He does a lot of really stupid stuff on the feet. Like, he's not at all a technical fighter on the feet. I know people criticize DDP in terms of, like, technique and such, but the reality is he's going to do whatever's the most efficient. We have seen before, he's capable of very technical striking. When he fought Strickland the second time, he didn't use any wild blitzes. Everything was just very calculated, countering Strickland's jab and so on. He didn't even need to wrestle in that fight. So, Dricus is going to fight the most efficient way, I know that. Chimaev is looking to finish you in round 1, maybe round 2, but he needs to continuously keep damaging you and so on. So, ultimately, Chimaev has 1 round to get this done. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but he has 1 round to severely compromise DDP, in my opinion. And his camp for this fight was a pure wrestling camp. Now, that's basically leaving the only option that Chimaev has here is to ragdoll DDP and finish him relatively early in the fight, or show that he can somehow do it for 5 rounds. If Chimaev can do that for 5 rounds, he has the best cardio in human history, because the reality is no one can sprint for 25 minutes. That's just what it is, right? So even though they're like, oh, Chimaev's working on cardio, where he's doing a full camp around cardio, yeah, I expect his cardio to be better 100%. I don't expect him to be able to have cardio past 3 rounds still. Right? Maybe he's able to sprint for a little bit longer. Maybe he paces himself a little bit better. But when we get into rounds 4 and 5, he's definitely going to slow down, if it gets that long. So, yes, for everyone who's saying that Chimaev is going to ragdoll and submit DDP in round 1, 100% possible, right? I will not be surprised with the outcome if Chimaev shoots a takedown and is able to just get dominant control and submit DDP in round 1. However, if it goes anything past that, he's going to have a massive disadvantage here. Because overall, he's not, even in the pure wrestling, right? DDP has better technique than Chimaev. He doesn't have better execution because Chimaev is a lot more athletic. But DDP has much better technique. If Hamzat had the skill of Islam, he would be the GOAT, 100%. Watching GSP's reactive takedowns and watch Hamzat, you'll see how much better wrestler GSP was. Yeah, exactly. Hamzat doesn't do anything, like, technically correctly. What do you think of Dricus' coach saying they wanted to engage in the wrestling with Chimaev? I agree with that. Drain Chimaev's gas tank. As long as you don't get subbed early, he's going to have the advantage there. All that being said, Hamza round 1 sub. Yeah, 100% possible, right? If you're picking Chimaev because you think he's going to sub DDP in round 1, I'm not going to say you're wrong, right? You could 100% be right. What do you think about DDP wanting to ground fight Chimaev? Yeah, it's a good option. So everyone was very confused when Khabib said that Chimaev should wrestle with DDP. But he's actually kind of right. Because if Chimaev just struck for the first 3 minutes and didn't wrestle at all, he would have a big advantage because du Plessis is going to expect the wrestling. So the striking would be a little easier than it normally would be, and then once he switches to the wrestling, it would be a lot easier to get that initial takedown. So if we had actually like intelligent game planning for Chimaev, he could probably actually sneak out a decision, or maybe even a knockout on the feet. But seeing by the fact that Chimaev's camp was purely wrestling and cardio with no real kickboxing, I do not think that is going to be the approach here. In what round do you think DDP gets it done? I'm going to see DDP 4th round TKO. How likely is it to make it over 4.5 rounds? I'm going to say there's a 20% chance. Hamzat versus Imavov is interesting to me because Imavov is a very good wrestling. Yeah, I mean, Imavov is a pretty good wrestler. Did you hear Chimaev's corner didn't even game plan or watch tape on DDP? I did not hear that, but if that's so, that is absolutely insane. It took Chimaev a lot of time to attempt that face crank on Whitaker. It was over 3 minutes. Yeah. DDP's body kicks are going to be nasty. Yeah, agreed. 170. Usman would destroy Hamzat in title fight. Yeah, or even if it was just 5 rounds, most likely. Hamzat is terrible in guard. I don't think he's terrible. He's done okay in guard before, but it's definitely not his preferred position. He's definitely not as good there. His head coach admitted it and said they were going to do what they always do. Yeah, if that's the case, then Chimaev's only chance is a very early finish. And again, I will not rule it out. It definitely could happen. Anyways, I think your 40 fight IQ for Chimaev is a gross exaggeration. Even a 5-year-old has an IQ of 40. The fight IQ rating was not an IQ rating. It was out of 100. If it was a regular IQ rating, yes, I agree with you. This is out of 100 with 50 being average. I would definitely say that Chimaev has below average fight IQ for a UFC fighter. I just joined. How far into the breakdown are you? We're at the main event. We're actually wrapping up the main event. I don't think he was expecting Burns to wing stuff off his back the way he did. Very true. This is one of those fights I'm super hyped for. Yeah, valid. Kind of crazy it went 50-50 to everyone besides you and another YouTuber picking Hamzat. That's funny, yeah. Who else is picking DDP? Lol versus Hamzat at 170. Hamzat probably gets a finish. How likely is over 12.5 minutes? I'd lean towards yes. I'm going to say like a 65% chance. Silly question, but who is your top 5 of all time GOAT? GSP, Silva, DJ, Jones probably 4, and then 5th is kind of up for grabs. I say Aldo, but a lot of people think Aldo is like an outdated pick, which I kind of outdated pick, I should say, which I kind of get. Should Drakus maybe go into his back and try to BJJ him? I think Drakus just needs to keep the pace up. I don't think you want to go into your back. I think you want to try to keep it on the feet, force Chimaev to shoot over and over, keep things moving, and just don't get subbed. Do you think DDP at plus 200 is a good bet? Well, I'll tell you I took it. Thoughts on the McGregor news? What is the McGregor news? 5th is probably Fedor, 6th is Volk. I don't have Fedor in the top 20, but I know a lot of people do. I think Fedor really only beat Cans for the most part. John Silva versus GSP. Who do you think would have won pound for pound? I mean, that's a very tough question. Because there's so different weight classes, metas, and so on. Do you think Sam Calavita is actually world class? Ron MMA made a vid claiming he overworks his fighters. I'd be curious to hear your take. Honestly, I don't know. That stuff is really not my forte. I couldn't tell you without doing a lot more research. What was your Pico prediction? I took Murphy decision 29-28. You're about to summon a legion of old heads with the Fedor take. Fair, respected, valid. I got Lawler and TRT Vitor fair. I love how mentally prepared DDP is. Most strikers just get frozen due to the heavy pressure wrestling, but DDP knows that he's gonna get taken down, but isn't the end of the world. Yeah, exactly. Connor or Mavzar? I'd say Connor Chinsman won. W for not underestimating DDP's fight IQ. Thank you. GSP's urgency leads to point fighting masterclass. Fair. You can't compare flyweight to heavyweight, like they're both different, literally. Yeah, true. Do you think DDP by sub is worth any money on? It's possible. I think he will look for the sub just to have fun. But, like, I think TKO is more likely. You're saying it could end in a draw? It's possible. Yes, I have DDP. I picked DDP 4th round TKO. Elliott versus Asakura pick. Oh, okay, we'll just go through all my picks very quickly for people who just got here, right? So, Idris versus Morales. Idris 2nd round TKO. Craney Silva decision 29-28. Battle TKO, let's say early round 3. Barboza TKO round 2. Hooper submission round 2. Loopy decision 30-27. Skipping this. skipping this one because I'm biased. Susurkaev around 1 TKO. I'm always going to struggle to say his name. Asakura around 1 TKO. Cannonier around 2 TKO. Prates round 2 TKO. Murphy 29-28 decision. Plessis round 4 TKO. Who do you think they'll have for a Gucci fight? I think they'll just reschedule the Tagir fight, to be honest. Why Jared? You should probably just scroll back in the video to see my full explanation on that one. I gave a pretty in-depth explanation there. Before I answer some more questions, we'll probably do around 13 more minutes of questions. I do want to shout out my betting service. If you are betting on this event, I do provide algorithms in a community to do so. It's the link that is in the description here. I'm not necessarily sure how it looks, but it's one of the 2 links in description. Basically, I have algorithms that help us bet. We make bets using them. There is a default strategy that is up around 150 units on the year. If you are betting and not on that, it is pretty cheap. I don't charge much, and we do extremely well. So please do get on that if you have not already. And we'll do another 13 minutes or so of questions. MVP's chin hasn't been tested all in the UFC, exactly. How exactly do you see DDP getting out of the first round? A lot of pressure. If you force Chimaev to go backwards, he's going to have a lot more trouble shooting because of the fact that he really needs to move forwards to shoot because of how he shoots super low. So if DDP runs to the center and tries to push Chimaev back, starts blitzing immediately, it's going to be a chaotic round 1 where Chimaev's going to be looking for his opportunity to shoot and he's going to start having problems. How much do you charge? $25 a month. Mir, Krokob, Silva, Rogers. Okay, Mir is not a bad win, yes. Krokob is like, in kickboxing would be a much better win than in MMA, realistically. Silva, like let's be real, skill for skill was not very good. It's pretty corny how fans are like DDP by plot armor, and I know it's a joke, but DDP is a fantastic game planner. 90% of fighters could learn from how he studies tape. You know, I am perfectly fine with most people not respecting it because it gives me my own niche here. You think DDP's size will be draining for Khamzat, as Khamzat always likes to outmuscle his opponents early? Yeah, I do think it will be. Thoughts on DDP attempting the Masvidal knee, unironically. So I don't think it will work because Chimaev shoots so low that you can't really time a knee on that as well. Maybe there's a way to modify the angle, but it's not going to be easy. Do you train or just analyze? If you do, I assume that means what do you train if you do? Yes, I do train. I used to train a lot more before I started having medical issues, unfortunately. What do I train now? Mainly general MMA, some BJJ. That's an interesting take. I respect it. Thanks. I think Khamzat is going to try and take him down as soon as the match starts. He probably will. But usually he likes to throw a few strikes first. There's usually like 15 to 20 seconds before Chimaev shoots. I feel like we could see Sambo takedowns from Khamzat. DDP would not be expecting that. I don't think there's anything that DDP will not be expecting in terms of takedowns. Khamzat gets a takedown, he probably will. How do you think Drake survives, out of curiosity? I think Drake is used to a lot of fundamentals. I don't think we're going to see any crazy rules or things that could put him at risk here. I think it's just going to be like, okay, let's just control the shoulders, control the hips, push him away, and try to get up. John Silva or Chad Mendes? John Silva. Is Khamzat grappling in the open less or more dangerous than against the fence? I would say it's less dangerous. We've seen people be able to escape a bit more easily in the open. I'm not going to lie to you, no old head in my top 5 besides John Jones. Yeah, I agree with you. I'll take Fader's best win as Orlovsky. I don't even think that's a hot take. I think that's realistic. Great breakdowns. Glad I found the channel. Thank you. DDP by Darce choke after Khamzat shoots a sloppy takedown late round 2. Early rounds. I assume you mean 3. It's possible. I mean, it wouldn't be a crazy outcome. Open, Chimaev can't do anything in the cage. Now, Chimaev likes to use the cage. He'll push you against the cage and then only need to use one hook at that point. Vader's best win is Crow Cop. I don't think in MMA, Crow Cop is as good a win. I understand the take, but if you look at how Crow Cop did in like the UFC and such, and I know he was a little bit older at that time, I just don't think MMA Crow Cop is that level. Play devil's advocate, why join in on your tool while it's in Strat 2? Why not just wait until Strat 3? You've been debating joining for a while. Interested to hear on your thoughts. Well, even if Strat 3 is going to be better to Strat 2, Strat 2 still makes money. So why wouldn't you just make money now and then make more money later? Like, you don't need to wait and then just make money later. Like, you'll still be making money now if you use it effectively, realistically. Like, obviously, nothing is guaranteed, but historically speaking, it does well. So you might as well be able to like contribute to the community and see how things are being developed and then go from there. Do you think you could work with fighters directly to work on their game plans? Yes, and I do to an extent. I have worked with a few fighters. I hope to work with more higher level fighters soon. Something in me thinks this fight is going to be reminiscent of Klose and Tebow versus Khabib with the outcomes reversed. Possible. I feel like DDP is going to jump over Hamza. Fair enough. That would be funny, but the funniest part of that is it is mildly possible. Like, when Chimaev shoots, you could jump over it because of how low he shoots. Probably not going to happen, but it is mildly possible. What's your height and weight class? I can make flyweight. Put it that way. Boxing is king. Not for MMA, in my opinion, because the glove size. Again, they just don't get like fundamental like MMA striking defense. I imagine Chimaev for a moment lets TDP just throw a crazy power shot as he starts. I don't know what you're trying to say there. Honestly, with how low Chimaev shoots, there's a good chance TDP does leapfrog him. Yeah, exactly. How good is Judo as an MMA base? I wouldn't say it's a good MMA base. I would say it's good to add on. I just don't think it's versatile enough to be a base. Because getting to the Judo positions without having other stuff is not too easy. Like, if you have like good wrestling and then you add in Judo, okay, fair enough. Then you could shoot and then come up and then throw if you need to. Been shown that simply not panicking against Chimaev is how you survive. That is true. How much success do you think Klose can and will have in the wrestling against Barboza? It's a little bit hard to say because, again, we just don't know where Barboza's like mind state and body are at. But I think that Barboza is going to be a little bit too fast for Klose to shoot on. And if you're too predictable with how you're shooting on Barboza, he's just going to time the flying knee. So I think that Klose will try to shoot. I think the speed difference is going to be big. Can you ever see RDR becoming champion? No, not really. Also, if he fights Chimaev, how do you see it going? I think RDR can sub him, but they both have terrible cardio. If he fights Chimaev, I think Chimaev is just going to knock him out. I don't think Chimaev will bother wrestling, to be honest, because he knows if he just throws a hard straight, he can knock out RDR. I would say that in his hands, Chimaev has more natural power than Whitaker, and there's no real defense for RDR in terms of straight shots. But I was busy doing something else. Who'd you pick again? For the main event, DDP. Kaio's the backup fighter for the main event. I mean, yeah, he is, but it's not going to matter. Yeah, against Rob could make jump through Hamza, yeah. What if Hamza pulls out and Kaio steps in? I think that I'd favor DDP for sure, but it takes the game planning out of the picture from both sides, so it kind of just becomes skill for skill. But I think that DDP's game is enhanced by game planning. I think Kaio's is very dependent on game planning. So I think it favors DDP. The memes of DDP Mario jumps over Hamzat's first shot. That'd be great, yeah. John versus Marab and John versus Jan. What do you think? John versus Marab could be problematic if you cannot make his reads, but I would lean John. John versus Jan, more confidently John. What do you think of... When do you think Jose Aldo exited his prime? I think that getting knocked out by Conor was like the last of his prime that was left. The guy who beat RDR for his middleweight and light heavyweight title can become middleweight champion. What's his name? Anatoly Malikin. He wouldn't pass a single drug test in the UFC. How effective do you think DDP's blitz can be in the Brunson fight? He seemed overwhelmed against a less technical striker. I can see DDP's blitz a lot, using his angles to open up the striking more. I think it will be effective as long as he doesn't blitz from static. He has to be pushing Chimaev back and then blitz so that Chimaev cannot shoot. What do you think of Fighting Nerds, their game planning levels? Yeah, Fighting Nerds are spectacular in terms of their game planning. All right, we'll do 3 more minutes and then wrap up at 2 hours. If Khamzat does get the back early, what do you think DDP game plan will be in that moment? Just not panic. Don't let him get like too deep on the body lock or anything like that. And just slowly get out or ride out the round if you need to. What do you think DDP can learn from Usman's performance against Khamzat? People say Chimaev dominated Usman round 1, but I think it was just him holding Usman down, no sub-threat. I think it's very much about the fact that we learned the very athletic base shot is going to fall off significantly in the later rounds. And maybe there are ways to even counter it in round 1 if you can properly down block. Because the down block is so much better against Chimaev's shot than the typical sprawl. What's your favorite fight to analyze so far? Probably DDP Adesanya. I have DDP winning his funky style. Game plan, taxes will be too much for Chimaev, high energy one-trick pony. Valid. If and when MVP wins, how would you see MVP versus Strickland? Could the pressure of Strickland come to play, or would MVP's footwork be too tricky for Sean? I think Sean would need to set his ego aside and wrestle, but as long as he's willing to shoot, he should be able to just pressure MVP and wrestle when he needs to and win a point fight. John Silva versus Ilya. I think it's very 50-50. I hope to see it someday, but I don't think it will happen. Fluffy or Chimaev. I would lean Fluffy being able to survive and win. How many takedowns do DDP and Chimaev score on each other? I'm going to say Chimaev gets 2 and DDP gets 2 also. I'm going to say it's 2-2 at the end of the fight. I think Strickland will outstrike MVP if they fought. Also possible. How likely do you think DDP versus Chimaev will go past 1.5 rounds? Like a 65-70% chance. I don't want Khamzat to win because it means we're getting 1 fight a year. Yeah, agreed. Which round should I bet Waldo to TKO Pavlich next week? I don't think it's happening, but we'll see. Would RDR pressure and size be too much for Kaio? Or does Kaio have the speed and footwork to evade and outpoint a slower RDR? I think Kaio just chins RDR because RDR is just so open to the straight shots. Which UFC fighter has the best chance against a gorilla in a fight? Maybe Aspinall could chin one? I don't know. DDP is definitely going to downblock most of the time instead of sprawl. Yeah, agreed. How would you matchmake the lightweight and middleweight divisions? I think just do Arman Gaethje and do Ilya Paddy. And a lot of people don't like Paddy getting a title shot, but I really don't think that Gaethje should be getting a title shot, and Arman just pulled out of his title shot. So yes, I know it's an execution for Paddy, but who cares? Just might as well use the hype that we got from the moments that they're both in the octagon, because because Rogan thinks that Paddy was Arman. You know what I'm talking about. I want DDP to grapple with Khamzat instead of just stopping his takedowns. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Ilya versus Islam. What do you think if we ever get it? I would pick Islam. Sorry, I would pick Ilya rather. Jeez. No, I would pick Ilya to knock him out because I don't like how Islam backs up to the fence and is very susceptible to the second strike in a combo. I think DDP is well on the way to being the middleweight GOAT. Very possible. All right, we are past the 2-hour mark. Thank you guys for sticking around. Appreciate the questions. Hope that this was a useful analysis. If you guys have not joined the betting service yet, feel free to check that out. and hope you guys enjoy the event. Have a good night, everyone.